Why are we putting the Renters' Rights Bill before ROPA? Today, I'm joined by Nicol Nightingale, who is a former letting agent, used to be at Anala Regional Rep, and now is a asset manager. Nicol, you said to me before we switched the cameras on, what the hell are we bringing in the Renters' Rights Bill when we've already got 170 pieces of legislation that aren't even being adopted or policed? Talk to me.
So I do feel that the government are perhaps putting the cart before the horse by introducing yet more legislation when they haven't dealt with ROPA and the regulation of property agents. It seems incredulous to me that we have so many people working in the industry who have had no formal qualifications, no formal training, and yet they are dealing with drawing up legally binding tenancy agreements, and there's nothing as yet to address that, yet we're bringing in more and more layers of legislation.
I mean, is the point here is that the current legislation is not being policed? I mean, if you don't mind me, well, no, yeah, go on with that one first.
I think that is part of the problem. And I know the government don't have the money to properly enforce it. But then why bring in other pieces? One of the big things that we always see in the headlines is about retaliatory evictions. That's a big one for shelter. We've got legislation in place to deal with that. We've got the Deregulation Act. If that was enforced, you wouldn't then need to bring in something else to deal with it. It's already there.
But isn't the Renters' Right Bill more for tenants' rights? You know,
Well,
the
so's
clue's
the
in the title, Renters'
deregulation,
Right.
but so's the Deregulation Act. That's there to prevent tenants being illegally evicted and having retaliatory eviction if they dare to complain to their landlord because they're not happy with the standards. That's already there to protect tenants. With the Renters' Rights Bill, again, I won't go on too much about the sort of intricacies of it, but a lot of what is being proposed in that actually won't help tenants at all, and it is quite misguided.
But I think it will actually, because it now putting the policing of it in the court of the tenants, because you can have the rent repayment orders up to 2 years. So they're going to police
But
it.
again, we already have rent repayment orders in place.
Okay. So what's the issue here? Knowledge of tenants that they can do this.
I think part of it is education of the tenants. There are obviously, big organisations like Shelter that are working hard to make sure that tenants know what their rights are, and tenants are becoming more aware of those, and they are willing to take those steps. The big issue you have is that the good agents, the good landlords, aren't the ones that these tenants are having problems with. It's the rogue agents and landlords. Bringing in another piece of legislation isn't going to tackle
But
that.
ROPA won't sort that out.
Well, it will if, when we come to some other points, we make some additional changes as well. So with ROPA, every agent working in the industry would have to be qualified. So that will tackle those rogue agents. If you do it alongside bringing in membership of a regulatory body as a mandatory requirement
For who?
for agents.
Okay, but only half of properties go with agents. What about the other 50% that self-manage?
So another point that I want to make is the fact that it is ridiculous that we still have landlords drawing up their own tenancy agreements. That's not helping tenants. That's not protecting tenants. You've got landlords who think they know what they're doing because they've been a landlord for many years. They'll get a tenancy agreement off the internet. They'll draw one up themselves. They don't know the legislation that should be included in there. That's not going to protect the tenants. If the government really want to protect the tenants, they should make it mandatory or a legal requirement that tenancy agreements are only drawn up by somebody who has had formal training and a qualification. The same way you have a lot of sales
But who's going to
property.
police all this?
Well, that's where you need the regulatory bodies to come in. When you look at other industries, so you look at financial industry, that's regulated by the FCA. With anything to do with the care industry, we have the CQC. Look at education, we have schools being audited every 4 years by Ofsted. Why can't we have a similar situation for lettings? Because we're letting people who have very little, if any, understanding of the legislation draw up legally binding agreements.
But the Renters' Rights Bill is a politically motivated piece of legislation. You know, it's going to be the only piece of legislation that probably Labour will get through in this Parliament. it's coming, whether you like it. We're filming this in May. You know, this video will probably be coming out in June or July. We might know when it's getting royal assent. It's a politically motivated thing. What can letting agents do to put the horse after the cart?
So I really do think that now is the time for agency owners to be investing in their team. We do think that ROPA is going to be back on the agenda. It is being discussed. We do think it is going to come. You need to get ahead of the game. You need to be training your staff now. You need to be making sure that your team are qualified, that they do know what they're doing. Because there's a bigger picture here. If you're doing that, yes, it's a cost and a time investment into your team. But one of the biggest problems we have as an industry is recruitment and retention of staff. One of the ways that you can address that is to make sure that you're equipping your team with skills and making sure that they can stay in the industry because they've got qualifications behind them. They can then grow and develop into different roles that require that level of knowledge and skill.
Thank you for your time today, Nicole.
Thank you.